He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith Chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fith Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 84 of the Fith Chapter. 5 more fantastic chapters. 84 is a special number because that's the last year the Tigers won the World Series, and that was the year I was born. A little bit younger than Dennis, but Dennis, a big weekend of sports ahead. You got the Michigan State rematch. You got UFC 259, and you've got the NBA All-Star Game. Which one are you least excited about?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I used to be real excited about the All-Star Game, but they don't pass anymore. I don't like it. So I'm not going to watch the All-Star Game. That's for sure, baby.
That was actually a pretty good invitation to Dick Vitale.
Well, once you watch them for a little bit over the years, it starts
creeping
in.
Are you serious? Are you serious? It's unbelievable, baby.
I do think the more people that are bald do the Vitale impersonations better, though.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
There you go. Are you serious? Are we going on Facebook or not? Here we go. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think we're on Facebook, aren't we?
Well, I'm looking. It says live now. Let me see. Oh, yeah, there it is. Watch this video. Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. All right, we'll definitely want to thank everyone who's tuning in for 5 fantastic chapters on Facebook Live, YouTube, or Twitch. Also want to thank those who are listening to the podcast via Apple, Google, or Spotify. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live or YouTube. Dennis will be reading through your feedback throughout the course of the show. And if you're wondering what the heck we'll be talking about during the show, let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, should the same old Lions consider tagging, how about their sack leader Romeo Okwara if they don't tag Kenny Galladay? In the third chapter, there's a report out today that the Boston Celtics are interested in trading for Jerami Grant of the Pistons. Should the Pistons flip him for whatever the Celtics can offer? In the fourth chapter, spring training is underway. We'll tell you which Tiger or Tigers, if any, have piqued our interest so far. We've also got the major wager. And then, of course, in the fifth chapter, Big Gretch and some other governors around the country are rolling back COVID-19 restrictions. We'll tell you what that could mean not only for stadiums, but also for restaurants and whether or not that's a good idea. But Dennis, let's start off with the first chapter. And that takes us to the NFL and the draft. We talked earlier this week about, and as a matter of fact, we've been talking for weeks about who the Lions should draft at 7, looking at mock drafts. Should the Lions consider a quarterback? You had Mel Kiper Jr. either early this week or last week, I think it was on Monday, saying that he would not consider a quarterback for the Lions at number 7. And then sort of on the fly during our show on Tuesday, you said, hey, what about taking a quarterback in the later rounds of the draft? What about a day 3 project quarterback? And, perhaps a guy that could turn into the next Kirk Cousins, who was drafted first overall in the 4th round, or Dak Prescott, who was drafted in the 4th round. But Dennis, which late round quarterbacks, if any, interest you?
Well, there was one that I was looking, speaking of around the 4th round, I was looking at Kellen Mond, but I guess you can't consider him after I watched with Chris Sims and after where he projects Kellen Mond to go. I thought, he was going to be like a 4th round or later type quarterback, and I did like him, but apparently some others like him as well, so much so that, maybe that he'll go in the 1st round. I picked 2 guys that I don't think I wouldn't pick him in the 4th round. I don't think I would even pick him in the 5th round, but I'm talking about 6th 7th round. So I'm going real late round quarterback. And one of them's out of the Big Ten, played at Northwestern in Peyton Ramsey. Every time I've watched him, I've liked him. He's got a nice feel for the game. I like how he delivers the ball, and he's smart as heck. We know that. I know, like anybody that goes to Northwestern. However, he knocked it out of the park on the Wonderlic test for whatever that was worth. But he's really smart. But he hasn't had like top shelf wide receivers. I think that a flyer would be appropriate for Ramsey. Another guy that I liked, although they did not like him down at the Senior Bowl, he got bad grades there, is Ian Book from Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
He squirms around in the pocket. I know he doesn't have the biggest arm, but I like what he does when he gets the ball and rolling around a little bit. Has a good feel in the pocket, some escapability there, and he's not the greatest athlete, but he can pick you up some yards. That's another guy, 7th round. I'm not sitting around here telling you that these guys are going to come in and, boy, just look for them to start. There's a reason that they would fall to the 6th, 7th round.
Yeah.
But those are two guys that I like, Ramsey from Northwestern and Book from Notre Dame.
Yeah, well, you kind of stole my thunder with Kellen Mond because he was the guy at the top of my list. And you mentioned Chris Sims. I hadn't even really taken a deep dive into looking at which quarterbacks I was going to consider for the show yet until I listened to his podcast. And it's a very good podcast. It's second only to the Fifth Chapter podcast. But he was going through his top 6 quarterbacks for the draft. And we'll show you a little bit later what his top 6 rankings are. And they might surprise you. But he had Kellen Mond, just as a spoiler alert, at number 4 overall among quarterbacks. We'll tell you who 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 are a little bit later, but he had him at number 4, and you don't see Kellen Mond as a first-round pick quarterback when you look at some of the mock drafts out there. And I get what you're saying about, maybe now the secret is out because Chris Sims said it, but I was looking at the CBSSports.com rankings earlier today, and they had him rated the 8th best quarterback prospect and the 134th best prospect overall. And if he goes in the 130s, then that means he's going early in the 5th round. So if that projection holds true, then he could certainly fall to that category. And when I was listening to Sims, he was just gushing about Kellen Mond and saying he was just a machine and his mechanics are always on point. And he liked him better than some quarterbacks that you might think could go in the top 10, which I'm not going to spoil for you just yet. But he said that he's certainly a first-round talent, and he brought up some numbers that I wasn't aware of, and numbers are things that I think all of us can look at, because you can, a guy like Chris Sims can talk about breaking down his mechanics and things like that, and we won't notice that from watching a game, but we know that the SEC is a great conference, and we know that Texas A&M plays in the SEC, and I didn't realize it until he said it, but 19 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. That's what he did in the SEC this past year. He also had 294 yards rushing. So if Chris Sims is right and all these other general managers in the NFL believe that Kellen Mond is the 4th best quarterback, then he could go in the top 10, certainly in the first round. But if Chris Sims is the only guy who's right about him, then I think that he could fall to the Lions in the 4th or the 5th round. I would assume not the 5th round, but if he's there in the 4th round, I would definitely consider taking him. One other thing that I think is important to note is, when you look at these quarterbacks, the guys you consider to be the top ones, even if you would include Mond in there, you look at Trask, Jones, Lance, Fields, Wilson, Lawrence. It seems like there's a big drop-off after those guys, because then you start looking at guys like Jamie Newman, who transferred to Wake Forest and didn't play, Felipe Franks, who transferred from Florida to Arkansas, Peyton Ramsey, like you said, 6th or 7th round pick, Ian Book, same situation, Ellinger. Some of these mock drafts don't even have them drafted at all. So I think there's a big drop off after you get past guys like Jones, Mond, and Trask.
Yeah, I'll buy that. You know what? We have mostly just been talking about a tier that goes Lawrence and Wilson and Fields. At least those are with if you combine you and me, I guess the 5th chapter tier. Although I know you don't really like Wilson, but Lance, to me in the top 10 seems a little bit shaky. I think he should be taken outside the top 10. That doesn't mean the team's not going to jump up and take him. But the amount of love that Mel Kiper's given a guy like Jones from Alabama, and now what you see what Chris Sims is saying about Mon, and maybe those guys fit in that 10 to 20 range. But I hear what you're talking about when you tear them up. I don't think Trask is going in the first round.
No, but I mean, even if he goes in the second or high in the third, it seems like there's a big drop off after him. I mean, you could go a round or two till you find another quarterback drafted after Trask goes. But Dennis, let's put the Chris Sims rankings up on the screen for everybody, and just so you know, if you're drinking something right now, if you're a little bit wobbly and you walk around with a walker or a cane, you might want to sit down for this, because these rankings do not go, they're not even close to what the average person has or what most of the mock drafts have. And I'll say this before I show you. One thing I respect about Chris Sims is when he was explaining how he did his rankings, he said that he didn't follow the narratives and he doesn't watch a whole lot of college football during the course of the season of the college football show. So he wasn't like, he knows that Trevor Lawrence is a great player without watching every single game week by week, but he didn't pay attention to what all the analysts were saying, and he would just sit down. He sat down, I think this past week or so, and just dialed in and watched every single throw that all these quarterbacks made, and so that's how he formed his opinion, not based on the hype. But here are his top 6 quarterbacks, and this ranking could blow you away. Number 1 is not Trevor Lawrence. It's Zach Wilson of BYU. Number 2 is Trevor Lawrence. Number 3 is Mac Jones of Alabama. Number 4, like we mentioned, Kellen Mond. Number 5, Justin Fields. And number 6, Trey Lance. Dennis, is Chris Sims on to something? Is he crazy? What do you think about these rankings by Chris Sims? In particular, Mond ahead of Fields and Lance, and Wilson number 1. And you could also, I think that perhaps Jones at number 3 is a big surprise too.
Well, the biggest surprise there is Zach Wilson being in front of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, from the first time that I've watched him, first time that anybody's seen him, he looks like a Peyton Manning with wheels. Like he looks like a sure thing, generational quarterback, best QB since Andrew Luck coming out, absolute sure thing. So to have anybody, go and put somebody in front of him seems really odd. You know what? I have not gone through. It's one of the things that I want to do. Like BYU played on a lot of Friday night games in college. So almost seemed like every one of their games was on Friday night, except that Coastal Carolina game. I want to go through and just watch all of those games and see what all like. I see it. I see him throwing the ball, and but it doesn't jump out to me like what I see from Trevor Lawrence. I do have to say with Mac Jones. You watch enough Alabama. I remember when Mac Jones got the start against Michigan in the Outback Bowl last year. I remember he threw the ball deep to Henry Ruggs. Ruggs, running a 4-3 right down the middle seam route, and he just stuck it right in there. I was like, you can't make a better throw than that. It was a great first impression, and you watch, he's just got just all of these great wide receivers, but there's not a lot not to like about Mac Jones if you watch him throw the ball. He's not the most mobile guy, but when you look at him and his ball placement and just how he throws with ease and kind of the arm strength that he can put behind it, finding all of his receivers, man, he throws about as much as a catchable football as you can. I think I do it. I think others do too. You downgrade him a little bit because he is at Alabama. He followed Tagovailoa, didn't have a lot of hype. You're thinking like, it's just he's got just all of the wideouts, the great tight end, the wide receiver. He's got the awesome running back behind him that's hurdling everybody. And I just think he gets lost there because of all of the great people around him. That doesn't mean he can't be great. So I see what these guys are looking at when they look at him. But to me, the thing still is Fields. People like to talk about that Northwestern game. He busted up his hand and he just kept giving the ball to Trey Sermon. That game. People say, he was terrible that game.
Didn't he have a receiver or two that was out too?
Yeah.
I think Olave was out, wasn't he?
Olave, yeah, not Garrett Wilson. Olave, yeah, you're right. I didn't take like I watched that game from start to finish, and now he didn't have good numbers, but he did hurt his thumb, and then he just handed the ball off. So there was one part in the it was the championship game. It was like at the end of the first quarter, they were down in the red zone, and Fields had like two or three throws that I was like, they were cringeworthy. And it was the first time that I'd watched them and thought, you know what? Now that I see what, some of these guys that are not as high on them and what they're looking at. But of course, you watch that semifinal game and you see what he can do, especially, throwing the ball deep, and he's got great wheels.
Yeah.
I still like the upside of Justin Fields. I take a little bit of what everybody's saying about Wilson, and I've got Fields though right behind him, right there, breathing down his neck.
Yeah, when I was listening to the podcast last night, I was surprised, just like everybody else, at the rankings, particularly 1 and 2, with him rating Zach Wilson number 1 and Trevor Lawrence number 2. But when somebody says something like that, there are obviously two things you can do. You can obviously just click him off right away and say, oh, forget this, or you can listen to his reasoning, particularly if you trust the source and you trust that the guy knows more about football than you do, and I do, and listening to him, he also runs his podcast on video like we do, but I was listening, not watching, and the things he was saying, he was comparing him to Patrick Mahomes. He was comparing him to Aaron Rodgers. He was saying that this was not an opportunity to rag on Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence was absolutely worthy of the number 1 overall pick, but Zach Wilson's mechanics are always flawless. Whether he's on the run or he's in the pocket, he's always dropping dimes at all times. And he said that he used the word machine many times when talking about quarterbacks, and Zach Wilson was that guy. And he said that even though he rated Wilson higher than Lawrence, he knew that there was a whole lot of hype about Lawrence, so he watched both quarterbacks again, and he said that he still believed that Wilson was ahead of Lawrence and that there was some clear separation between the two. So maybe I'll go look back at some video of Zach Wilson, because I think it is interesting if you have a guy say that, yes, Lawrence is exceptional, but Wilson is clearly better than him. And I'll admit that outside of parts of the Coastal Carolina game, I didn't watch Zach Wilson play a heck of a lot in the 2020 season. As far as those other guys, I didn't watch Kellen Mond play very much, so I want to take a look at that. I was a little bit surprised at what he said about Justin Fields, because I think we all know that he throws a great deep ball. And, when you look at his numbers, he hardly ever throws interceptions. He had a little bit of an issue at the start of the 2020 season, but, the 2019 season, he threw 1 before the CFP, and then he threw 2 in the CFP. But he was saying that he wasn't all that great on short routes. Whenever I watch Justin Fields play, I don't see any problems with him. I see him at times go like 21 of 22 for like 300 yards. So I still would not have an issue with him being a top 10 quarterback. But if he's right about a guy like Mond and he drops to the 4th or 5th round, he'd be a steal. And if he's right about Zach Wilson and he drops to number 7 in the Lions take him, then arguably he'd be a steal as well if he's turning into the next Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers.
yeah. If that happens, then we look back and say, hey, Chris Sims. The one thing, it's great to like put yourself and walk out on the ledge, but when you do something with somebody that's supposed to be the best quarterback in 10 years, it's the part that I also like. And again, you like sticking your neck out there, but if Wilson ends up being a flop and you're the only guy that went out there, you got to say, hey, Sims, that was kind of stupid. I think, this is one of those things that can follow you around forever.
Well, one of the things he pointed out was that he was right last year when he said that he liked Herbert more than Tua. And right now, he looks pretty good with regards to that evaluation.
He did say that. That was a good one. I can remember Dan Orlovsky, when he was first coming out, he would cut up tape of quarterbacks. It was before he got his job at ESPN. He was putting his evaluations on Twitter, and I was watching some of them. And when he got and went to Josh Allen in Wyoming, he looked at him and he was like he wouldn't have drafted him in the first 4 rounds. He's like, this guy's got the only thing he's got is arm strength. He can't read a defense. He stares down his receivers. After I watched the tape, I was like, man, Dan Orlovsky he's either going to live or die with this. Like, if the way he's just dogging out Josh Allen, like this guy couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time with his inability to read the defense. So I always remember that, I think what it does, it goes to show, you can say that like some of the stupidest things, and people really don't dig it up. Like, as long as you can just have a strong opinion on it, it's like, hey, he just has a strong opinion. I really like hearing it. And there might be something to learn there. But let's look at some of the feedback.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Okay, let's go here to Keith. It's good to see him back. He said he missed us last week, but he's here today to hype it up a little bit. Let's see. First, Paul W., college sports for the win. He's always there. He wants to know about the status of minor league baseball and the Western Michigan Whitecaps. I think they're delaying all of it. AAA, they're delaying it for a month. I don't know what they're doing with the Whitecaps.
Yeah, I think they're delaying just about all minor league baseball for a month.
Keith says Jamie Newman from Wake Forest skipped last year due to COVID. Big time talent, dual threat, 4th or 5th round sleeper. Jamie Newman.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed like a decent quarterback in 2019 and then didn't play in 2020, so he's a tough evaluation. And he's kind of like Trey Lance in that he did not play, except he's less highly regarded. So if I don't know about 4th or 5th round, 6th or 7th round perhaps, but I don't know about 4th or 5th for him.
Keith laughing at Mac Jones. Ha ha ha! Says Wilson #1 is plain silly.
Well,
Jelinek.
Well,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, according to Chris Sims, and we're talking about him a lot, he said that it was clear that he can make more pro-level throws than Tua. And I also saw on Twitter, I think it was a TMZ tweet, that one Alabama receiver recently said that Mac Jones was a better passer than Tua. Sims also mentioned during his podcast that even though guys were wide open all the time at Alabama because they had such incredible receivers, he was hitting guys on the money, like you were mentioning. So he's obviously not going to lead all quarterbacks in rushing. He's not going to have 500 yards rushing, but in terms of progressions and being able to go from one to the next, he liked that ability from him as well, and he liked his mechanics. So we'll see. And Sims is obviously not the only guy who is moving him up the draft boards potentially into a top 10 pick.
Yeah, Mel Kiper's another one. Jelinek says Chris Sims is on something. Mon doesn't belong on that list, and Lawrence should be the overall #1. He says, how often do quarterbacks work out who aren't drafted in the first round? Russell Wilson is the only exception.
Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins. Now, there aren't very many. If you're drafted in the first round, no matter what position, you're a heck of a lot more likely to succeed. But, yeah, if you want to – I mean, we're talking about late round flyers and projects. We're not talking about guaranteed guys. And I have to imagine that while we're doing this with quarterbacks, we're not going to be dealing with who's your late round outside linebacker as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, Joe Montana wasn't a first round pick either. Let's look at a couple more here. Keith, I still take Fields, #2. It's rare that the quarterback who is not mobile and a stiff like Matt Jones could make it in the NFL. You need to be able to move a little bit and run to give the defense something else to think about, at least. Yeah, I like the quality of being able to move around in the pocket, and so you are being able to buy time. The faster, these guys are just getting faster and more blitzing coming at you. The ability to be able to move that pocket and have some escapability is something that I'm looking for. And then you could say, well, what about Tom Brady? That's a good counter.
Well, Tom Brady would be better if he could run like Lamar Jackson. I mean, you don't want the biggest, stiff, and the slowest guy possible because Tom Brady happens to be great.
Paul W. says, offensive scenario, Lions sign Galladay and draft Kyle Pitts. What kind of chance would you guys put that on happening?
Sign Galladay and draft Pitts? No, that's not going to happen. I think there's a heck of a lot more they're a lot more likely to not have either when they kick off the 2021 season.
Yeah, let me try some Chris Sims or Dan Orlovsky. There is 0% chance that the Lions are going to draft Kyle Pitts. Let's just
Yeah,
be honest about that.
yeah.
Beth over on Facebook. You know what? Beth using the Facebook chat. I love that. Let's see. Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers are like generational players. Is Wilson in that class? You never know.
Well, if Sims says that Lawrence is worthy of the number one pick, and there is clear separation between Wilson and Lawrence, then that would lead you to believe that perhaps Wilson could be in the same class as Rodgers and Mahomes. That's all I'll say. I don't have the same expertise of football that he has, and I have not watched as much Zach Wilson as he's watched. But if Zach Wilson is that much better than Trevor Lawrence, then it would lead you to believe that Zach Wilson would be as good as Rodgers and Mahomes.
Uh, let's see here. I still think Tua is going to be a very good quarterback. This is from Keith, who is a Tua truther. We know that. The guy was coming off a serious injury and barely got to practice or play leading up to the start of the season. And Jelinek is wondering whether Kirk Cousins has really worked out. I would say that he's worked out.
A fourth-round pick, getting an $84 million deal, and starting for most of his career, yes, he's worked out, Brian.
He won a playoff game too, right?
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's turn the page to the second chapter.
Yeah, that gets us to the aforementioned a wide receiver, Kenny Galladay. We talked a lot about him getting tagged, but what about if the Lions don't tag Kenny Galladay? What about Romeo Okwara, the Lions' edge rusher this year? 10 sacks and also had 18 quarterback hits. Tagging Okwara? What do you think?
Tagging who?
Romeo Okwara? Is that who we're talking about?
Giving $17.7 million to who?
Romeo Okwara.
Giving $17.75 million to a guy who's had one double-digit sack season in his 5-year career. 17 point.
Tag.
Yeah, no, 14 million. Don't you have to give a franchise tag before you can give a transition tag? I think that's the way it works. But $17.75 million for one double-digit sack season, and it was the worst double-digit sack season possible. Exactly 10, not 15, not 18.5, but 10. $17.75 million for a guy who was given a grade of 68.8 by Pro Football Focus, meaning he's rated as a very good backup player. 17.75 for a guy who's never been a Pro Bowler and has not even sniffed it. Clearing up $17.7 million just to bring back Okwara? No. There's nobody on the defense worthy of a franchise tag. Nobody that's worth paying $17.75 million on that defense, including him. And what would be the point of doing that? Just so that he can get 10 or 11 empty sacks in 2021 during a 4-12 season? So they can extend the time to negotiate a long-term deal with Romeo Okwara? For what? They don't need leverage. If he wants to come back, then that's fine. But he's not a must-have player that they have to keep from everybody else. If he wants to come back for a nice 3-year, $33 million deal, that's fine. If he wants a massive payday, then guess what? He can try to find it somewhere. He won't find it somewhere. If he does find it somewhere, say, good, we're happy somebody else was willing to overpay for you, but it's not going to be us. And would they tag him just so they can trade him? That's one of the rumors regarding Kenny Galladay. What contender is going to be willing to give up any sort of draft pick so that they can overpay Romeo Okwara? There's no way I'm going to consider tagging Okwara.
No, I'm not either. You know, he did have 10 sacks this year, but his previous 4 years he had 10 sacks altogether. So, you know, you add those up. You know, the Lions claimed him on waivers. You know, 2 years ago they gave him $6 million with right around $3 million guaranteed. They want to give him another 2-year deal for $12 million with 6 guaranteed. I know. What'd you say? 3 years, 33. So you were even a little bit higher than I was. Yeah, like the Lions, they got cap issues, and the one thing about overspending, like the guy's only 25 years old, so he does have that going for him.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing here, the Lions, you know, you have to overspend when you're talking about free agents. and just the Lions aren't in position right now to overspend. They want to be sensible, prudent, as Jamie Samuelson would say. He loved using that word. He always said people didn't really like it in sports, but the prudent thing to do here is worried about where your cap space is going to be the following year and the following year after that. So yeah, Romeo Okwara. I mean, he's not a Clowney or Melvin Gordon, some other guys that are free agent edge rushers that, those would be guys that, could get 10, 12, $15 million. Okwara will be lucky to get 6.
I think he'll get more than 6, but tripling that to almost $18 million for 1 year, there's no way. That'd be a huge waste of money. And I mean, I guess if you're hoping the Lions will tank, then clogging up a whole bunch of cap space in an overrated player will help out. But it doesn't make any sense. Now, you could also say, well, who's going to rush the passer? Because their number 2 pass rusher last year only had 3.5 sacks. Well, that just suggests that they have a lot of problems when it comes to rushing the passer. When their number 2 pass rusher had 3.5 sacks, they need to address this from not just bringing back Romeo Okwara and then dusting off their hands and saying they're good. That means that they've got to take a comprehensive approach when it comes to free agency, when it comes to the draft, maybe even through trade. But comprehensive does not mean overpaying Romeo Okwara. Nobody else is going to do it. And if the Lions do it, then it's a big SOL stamp on the forehead of Brad Holmes.
All right, let's look at some of the feedback. Beth says, I agree with Brian. Beth, we don't get feedback like that very often. I'm not
She's
sure smart. We should even give it to Kenny G. We are rebuilding. It's a good point. Jelinek, 3 years, $18 million solved for Okwara. Let's see.
I think there'd be one team out there, and that's all you need, that would be willing to give him $10 million a year. And there would certainly be one team out there willing to give him more than $6 million per year.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We do have an update from Ann Arbor, where Michigan is up 11 on Michigan State at the half. Wolverines favor. The possibility of the handicapping of that game in the major wager.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because it was a 12-point spread. So, yeah, that's 12-point spread depending on when you got the game. So, very important. All right, now we can turn the page to the third chapter. And that takes us to the hard court, but not to Ann Arbor. It takes us to the NBA, where the Detroit Pistons had 2 players get a triple-double in the same game last night, and that was not the biggest story on the team. By the way, they're in action. Perhaps we'll give you an update on that in just a second. But the biggest story on the team was not Dennis Smith Jr., who stayed solid, and Mason Plumlee recording triple-doubles, the second time in franchise history that happened. The big Piston story is about a guy who didn't even play yesterday in their blowout win over the Raptors, Jerami Grant. This is a guy many thought could sneak into the All-Star game with his numbers. He's averaging over 23 points a game, over a block per game. And according to The Athletic earlier today, the Boston Celtics are interested in Jerami Grant, perhaps acquiring him before the trade deadline, which is 3 weeks from today. There could be some real value in trading him now. He's got 2.5 years left on his deal. He's only making $20 million per year, only making $19 million this year. Dennis, should the Pistons try to flip Jerami Grant for some assets or try to build around him?
Well, I'm not opposed to dealing anyone. However, when it comes down to Grant right now, what they do have is an all-star. So you're going to have to get a pretty good return here. Like if the Celtics were coming up with some kind of lottery-protected first-round pick, I wouldn't want to do that. There was... Remember when they were in a situation where they had some bad teams, unprotected first-round picks? Now you're talking. But I wouldn't want an unprotected first-round pick for them next year. If we were talking about 2022, if the Celtics came up and said, we'd give you a first-round picks unprotected in 2023 and 2024, that's what it was going to take, 2 unprotected picks, unless they want to give up somebody like Jaylen Brown or something, which they're not going to want to do. So we know they're not giving up Tatum. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, 2 unprotected first round picks, but not starting next year, starting 2 years from now. That's the kind of compensation that I would look for if I was going to deal Grant.
Yeah, I would definitely listen to offers from the Celtics, and I don't know about 2 unprotected picks, but I think they need to give up at least 1. And when you consider the amount of salary that he's making, $19 million a year, that means that the salaries coming back to the Pistons would have to be in that 15 to 23, $24 million range. And I was just looking at hoopsite.com salary numbers to see what could make sense. You see Tristan Thompson Kardashian makes $9.3 million. You look at Romeo Langford, he makes $3.6 million. Aaron Nesmith, $3.5 million. Those are, don't really need Tristan Thompson Kardashian, but those other 2 are decent young players. You add a first round pick to that, that's $16.4 million, and perhaps you'd have a deal. I was also looking maybe Jerami Grant and Killian Hayes to Boston for Marcus Smart, Thompson Kardashian, and a first round pick. And you could pick which year that's going to be. And here's the other option you have to look at, and it's something that people like us rarely consider, but it happens a heck of a lot. And that is a 3-way trade or a 4-way trade. It doesn't have to be Detroit, Boston, and that's it. There could be a third team in there that has a lottery pick that the Pistons could get this year. I don't know. Does San Antonio want to break things up? Do they want to acquire a pick from the Houston Rockets after all the trades that they've made? There are lots of options out there when you've got 29 or 28 other teams out there who might want to make a deal before the deadline. In terms of just wanting to trade Grant, I think it's about listening to offers. He's not LeBron James in his prime. He's a big surprise this year, but he's not LeBron James in his prime. He's not Stephen Curry. He's not going to win an MVP anytime soon. Could he win an All-Star game nod if the Pistons become a good team? Because you typically don't give All-Star nods to teams that are one of the 3 or 4 worst in the league. Yeah, I think he's good enough to do that. But yeah, you need to have an offer that will blow you away. And in terms of a 1-to-1 deal, I don't know that there's a heck of a lot besides perhaps what I mentioned that would blow you away. I would be more interested in building around Grant, see what the Pistons can do with the young guys they've acquired this year, who they acquired in the draft. And if you want to trade him, you can still get a lot for him next year when he'll have a year and a half left on his deal. He'll still be making about $20 million a year, and you would assume he'll be putting up similar numbers.
Yeah, well, he'll be more valuable next year if he goes out there and continues his play right now. I thought it was interesting that Rod Beard, who covers the Pistons for the Detroit News, was making it sound like he was untouchable. Like he was calling the Pistons view him as a foundational piece.
He could be.
Well, I don't know. He's an all-star, but he's not a superstar. I don't know. A superstar sounds like a foundational piece for me. And we're talking about. Is that the terminology that's correct, or foundational piece is just somebody that you feel can be like one of your core 3 players? Does that make it a foundational piece?
First of all, technically he's not an all-star. I think he's close to good enough, and if the Pistons had a better record,
close to being an all-star.
Yeah, if the Pistons were the number 4 or 5 seed right now, I think there's a high likelihood he'd be an all-star. But I think that he's good enough to be a number 2 on a good playoff team, not like a play-in 9 seed or a 10 seed. But if the Pistons were like a 4 seed or a 5 seed, I think he'd be good enough to be a number 2 option. Maybe if Cade Cunningham comes to the Pistons and he wins the Rookie of the Year and he's looking like the next superstar in the league, then in the 2022-2023 season, he could be the one and Grant could be the number 2. I could see that as a possibility. But as far as being untouchable, like I said, he's not in the same category as a Curry or a Davis or a Grant or a Lillard, but he's a very good player, so you're going to need a very good return. He's got youth on his side. He's got a friendly contract on his side. You got to come with it if you want it. The Pistons should not be in any hurry to get rid of him, but if a great deal comes their way, then they should not treat him as untouchable.
Yeah, like to use what Joe D said. He's not a sacred cow.
No.
Like Joe D would say. I agree with everything you said there. I think you put it well. I do think, though, Wayne Ellington, DeLon Wright, Mason Plumlee, the Athletic said there were some teams that were kicking the tires and showing some interest in that trio. So Yeah,
Yeah, well, I
if they
mean,
can get something back for those guys, let's do
I
it.
heard about DeLon Wright, some rumors regarding him before he got hurt. But I mean, when's he going to come back? It could be another week or two, and then you only got 3 weeks before the deadline right now, so that kind of hurts his value. Plumlee has had, I believe, 2 triple doubles this year, so it'd be interesting to see what they could get for him. And then Wayne Ellington, I think that all contenders would like a 3-point shooter, and he's got a cheap contract. Could the Pistons get a high second round pick for him or something? Who knows? But if the team wants to take him off the Pistons' hands, why not?
All right, let's look at some of the feedback. Keith says you have to listen to offers, but not look to trade him unless you get a super deal. $20 million a year is a bargain, dude. Easily outplayed his contract. It was just like when we traded Marcus Morris, who's making a paltry $5 per year, and we got him for nothing. And stupid Van Gundy traded him and didn't get any value. I still hate him for that.
Well, he also acquired Marcus Morris on that cheap contract as well.
Good point. Let's see here. Beth says, doesn't Grant have a no trade clause in his contract? He wants his own team. That's why he came to Detroit. I don't know about that. I hadn't heard about a no trade clause.
Yeah, I don't know if he has one either, but I do know that Beth is right about that. He wanted to leave Denver so that he could be a number one option. And if he goes to Boston, he's not going to be the number one. He might not be the number two, just like in Denver when Murray was number one and Jokic was number two.
Yeah, he's really tight with Troy Weaver, too. And that's the part, like, he was wanting to come here and he sold that. Weaver sold that. Like, hey, you can be maybe our, like Beard was mentioning, a foundational piece with us moving. So, but, you can never say never with a guy like that. But, they're not shopping him and they're not listening to offers. But, yeah, something that blows you away, then he's not a sacred cow. Good stuff. Mm-hmm. Good stuff there. All right.
All right, let's turn the page now to the 4th chapter.
Yeah, that's going to get us to some baseball and Grapefruit League. The Tigers are underway. They played a few games here, chap. What has jumped out to you, if anything, about Grapefruit League action and the Tigers?
Well, yeah, they've only played, I believe, 5 games. The first game was on Sunday, so Sunday through Thursday, that's 5 games. And I don't think they've had any split squad games yet. And the guy who stood out for me, just from reading about what's transpired during the games, and this is since the first game of the season, is Willie Castro. In his first spring training game, and I think it was his first spring training at bat because it happened in the first inning, he hit a home run off of Ivan Nova, but not just a home run, it was a 458-foot home run. And then on Tuesday, he hit a 421-foot home run. Both were in the first inning, so we're not talking about guys that are, just prospects from that are going to be in advanced A ball. We're talking about guys that have major league experience or are going to be in the major leagues this year. And for him to not just hit home runs that were scraping over the wall, but a 421-foot homer, 458-foot home run, those are like Aaron Judge type home runs. He also has a double in his 6 at-bats. And, I remember watching him last year when he started to come on late in the year, and he wouldn't just hit home runs. He would hit absolute bombs. And you look at this guy and you say, he's not all that big. He's not built like Judge or Stanton. He's not husky like a Mike Trout. But here he is hitting these home runs like Miguel Cabrera used to hit, but from the opposite side of the plate. And now he's doing it in spring training, and I don't understand how he can generate that much power. But if he can do this during the regular season, then you're talking about a guy who can get you at least 30 home runs, maybe more. And if Alavila finds a guy from 3 years ago trading Leonis Martinez to the Indians for Willie Castro, who can be an everyday middle infielder and hit 30 home runs a year, that'd be a big boost to Avila, even if he still deserves to be fired.
Yeah, I agree. Willie Castro was the guy after what I saw in the first 2 games as well. Although Tigers' new pitching coach, Chris Fetter, and then A.J. Hinch have been looking to see what they've just been saying, looking for some quotes and what they've been saying about the staff. And I did find one from Hinch who said, quote, on Casey Mize, quote, his pitches are elite across the board. I like seeing that. That was a quote last week that I wrote down from Hinch. I don't know if he's gone out there and thrown yet, but
He
I wanted
did.
to see. I wanted to see what Hinch had to say about his stuff, and that quote was a good one for me.
Yeah, Casey Mize he's had one outing, extremely mixed results, 2 innings, no runs, 3 strikeouts, very likable, also 3 walks.
Okay.
So it's spring training. It's early. He's had one outing. Don't want to jump off the deep end, but he struggled with control last year, bouncing that split finger all the time, and now he's got 3 walks and 3 strikeouts. So it appears, at least right now, control is still an issue. Tariq Skubal, I noticed, has not thrown yet, so I'm interested to see when his first outing will be.
I'm with you on that. Tying it in with baseball was something that the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, came down with this week about opening day, and the Tigers. The governor is going to allow baseball fans into Comerica. That's the good news, but the bad news, chap, not going to be too many people.
No, not yet, and we'll get to that in the fifth chapter. You want to do the major wager first, though?
Yeah, you just tell me. I was going to marry up because it was a baseball thing. I was just going to throw it in here now, but I don't care.
No, yeah, we can do that. I mean, we can get to the rest of the governors in the fifth chapter, but in terms of the 750 fans, for a 40,000 person ballpark, that's 1 out of every 40 seats are going to be filled. I don't have an issue with that. Could they boost it up to 1,000 or 2,000 fans and still have social distancing? I think they could certainly do that. I don't like the idea of going to 25% or 50% capacity, because how can you possibly social distance if every other seat has somebody in it and there's 20,000 people there? But the most important thing to me is ensuring that we don't have super spreader events and we don't continue to spread the coronavirus amongst other people. So if we got 750 people at Comerica Park, LCA, we could start having that beginning next week. And I think you could also have 750 fans at the Breslin Center for Michigan versus Michigan State Part 2. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, there's always the other side, like big Gretch critics, let's call them. Like when they saw this, they were just up in arms and they were saying, look, restaurants are allowing 50% in right now, and you can only have 750 at Comerica Park, and it's outside. How does that make sense? And you try to think, well, I don't know why that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe you're thinking that if it goes up and you allow 50% at Comerica Park, then you're just asking for on opening day for huge crowds outside to gather, and you're trying to eliminate that. So maybe that's the part, because it's such an event. It's not just the people that are the inside. You're maybe discouraging people then from gathering outside too. But I'm not sure about that. I'm always looking for the thought behind it of just limiting it to the small number.
Yes, and 750 is a small number. It's certainly a smaller number than a lot of other states are allowing even right now. So,
we got a scoring update. Wings leading the Hurricanes 2-1 with 12:25 left in the second period. Jelinek pointing out that the Wings were plus 250 in this game.
Oh wow, if you picked the Wings to win, you're in good shape so far. Also, you want an update from Ann Arbor?
No.
Okay, I won't give you that. Do you want an update from Madison Square Garden?
Yes.
Knicks 41, Pistons 34. The Knicks are 7-point favorites. So
say it like Marv Albert.
The Knicks are up 7 over the Detroit Pistons.
Good effort.
Perhaps some spectacular moves by Julius Randle.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's not my best impression. All right, let's turn the page to the major wager before we get to the fifth chapter. And Dennis, from what I understand, you used your major wager on the Michigan State game.
Yeah, well, after taking a bad loss on Thursday, where I took West Virginia plus 4.5, and they lost by 5. Not feeling good about that, but. I was thinking this morning, hey, Michigan State. And before I looked and found out what the number was, I handicapped it myself. And I thought, I think Michigan, I think the line I think Michigan will win this one by 6. So then I put the line at 6.5. And so then I went on and checked the number. When it said 12, I said, you know what? If I think the number should be 6.5, and I think Michigan's going to win the game by 5 or 6 points, well, then I should tell everybody that I think they should bet Michigan State in this rivalry game, et cetera, et cetera. So that's who I picked, Michigan State plus 12.
And you don't want an update right now.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I know they were down 11 at the half, so there you go.
Okay. I will not give you an update whatsoever. I will just say this, that I bet on Michigan to cover the 12 points. So I'll just say that.
And I'll just say this, that usually makes me feel really good about my pick.
It does. On Tuesday, I picked the Bucks -8 against the Nuggets because the Bucks were getting Drew Holiday back for a second game. The Nuggets were second game of a back-to-back. And the Bucks not only didn't cover, the Bucks didn't just lose the game, they lost by 31. So I'd say that was a pretty bad bet. Tonight, I've got the Celtics -8 against the Raptors. Raptors just played yesterday and got crushed by the Pistons, who didn't have Jerami Grant or Josh Jackson. They're still missing Van Vliet, Siakam, and Anunoby due to COVID-19 protocols. So I took the Celtics -8, and right now at the half, the Raptors have an offensive explosion. They're up 70-66 on Boston. Perhaps they'll get tired down the stretch. Oftentimes that happens in the second half of these games, but right now they are extremely fresh. If you're looking for a game that hasn't started yet, how about the Spurs -6.5 over OKC? That game is in San Antonio, and the Thunder just played yesterday, and the Thunder are terrible. So that's a game to consider. All right, turning the page to the fifth chapter. We mentioned Big Gretch just a moment ago, and she and some other governors are rolling back coronavirus restrictions. Obviously, there's some good news out there with the third vaccine being approved this week, and the White House saying that there should be enough vaccines for all Americans by the end of May. But you got in the state of Michigan, bars and restaurants going from 25% to 50% capacity beginning tomorrow. Currently, fans are not allowed in sporting events, as you mentioned, beginning tomorrow. Up to 750 can attend in stadiums. And in two southern states, it's even more different. Beginning tomorrow, the governors of Texas and Mississippi will allow businesses to open up to 100% capacity and no mask mandates beginning tomorrow in Texas and Mississippi. That means you could have the Rockets hosting a packed house of 18,300 fans, nobody wearing a mask. Meanwhile, in the state
sounds like a Trump rally.
Perhaps Trump will have his next rally in Texas or Mississippi. Meanwhile, if you look at the numbers, Michigan's cases are starting to go up a little bit. They're at around 1,400 per day when they were around 150 per day lower a week ago. And nationwide, we plateaued at about 64,000 cases a day, and we're still averaging over 1,700 deaths per day. Dennis, 2 words, your thoughts?
Well, it's time to see what's going to happen out there. You know, the big social experiment on just how this is going to go over the next month or two. Thing about 50% is I don't get out very much. Let me amend that. I go every day out, and I drive up to the park, which is 1 mile away. So every day I take my dog 1 mile, and we come back. But sometimes I go and get gas like once a month because not a lot of mileage that I'm putting on there. And except last Saturday, the first time that I went out, I went down to downtown Ann Arbor to get some curbside delivery from Main Street, the seafood restaurant right down there. And I thought, my wife's just like, yeah, just pull right up. There won't be anybody down there. It was like a football Saturday. It was completely packed. Like, and it's a great place to go out and walk downtown and everything. It's a lot of stuff. It's like Royal Oak, I don't know if you've been down there. A lot of people have, but it was, just teeming with people. Half the people wearing masks, but just looking at the restaurants, they had a lot of outside seating there. But it's kind of peeking in, and the restaurants look packed. And from at least what a couple of my friends, my anecdotal stories here is that the restaurants are like, yeah, come on, 50%, kind of, yeah,
Yes.
they'll take as many as they want. So, I mean, when it was 25%, they were like, yeah, let's keep it down. So, I think when you say 50, you're kind of opening up the floodgates. I don't know if, I mean, what happens if you go to 60 or 70%? Are they kicking people out? Are they really? I mean, are the businesses really, going to enforce that? I mean, I don't know the answers to this. I do know that there's a lot of people that want to give this a go to see if we can do this and keep it under control. So it's happening, and you know, um, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because I think that I think what these politicians are doing is pretty stupid, but it's also predictable because they know that people are tired of wearing masks, particularly in certain portions of the country. They know that people want to reopen businesses, and they know that because the pandemic has gone on so long, the people are tired, and while they won't admit it, they really don't care if other people are getting sick and dying due to the pandemic as long as they're okay. They know that the scientists don't recommend going mask free at 100% capacity. And some scientists have spoken out saying this is not a good idea. This is a terrible idea. But I'm not surprised at all about what Big Gretch is doing, what they're doing in Texas and Mississippi and some of these other states.
We're not lifting the mask mandate.
No. There's still going to be a mask mandate here, but in terms of loosening restrictions during the pandemic, I'm not surprised that that's happening. You also have to consider this: the weather is warming up, and as we saw last year, when the weather warmed up, it made it more difficult for the virus to transmit. Now we've had mild weather this winter outside of a snowstorm or two. We've had weather in the 50s and 60s, or not quite 60, but in the 50s.
Next week, 60.
Yeah, next week it's going to be 63 on Tuesday and Wednesday. So a lot of people are going to be sick and tired of staying inside and want to go out and do things. And I think that has trickled down to the governors. When experts talk about 64,000 cases a day, that's still too many. When they start talking about the UK variant spreading, and I believe Michigan is number 2 in the country with UK variant cases, that's not a good idea. But people just don't care. Now, Michigan is on a different level than Texas and Mississippi because when you think about going to a bar in Jackson, Mississippi, or Houston, Texas, or Corpus Christi, Texas, shoulder to shoulder, no mask during a pandemic, or packed stadiums, that just sounds crazy to me, and I don't want any part of it. But you know what? There is one sporting league that looked at what was going on in Texas and said, we're going to take advantage of that. It broke a couple of hours ago. What league do you think that was, Dennis?
Soccer.
No.
Basketball.
No, I'll give you one more guess.
Football. Baseball.
No. The UFC.
Oh.
Dana White at his pre-fight press conference earlier today said that when he heard yesterday that they were opening up to 100%, he immediately started making calls about trying to get UFC 260 and 261 in Texas. Dallas said no, but Houston is a possibility on March 27th for 260 and certainly a possibility for 261. I don't know whether they're going to have any social distancing, 50%, 25%, but he's going all in because they're at 100%. I think it's stupid, but we're going to see when you look at the contrasting, the contrast of the herd immunity plus the vaccine lowering numbers plus the milder weather lowering numbers with the new variants coming out to raise it, and you also got these restrictions going out to raise the possibility. It could plateau, could go up, could go down. Who knows?
Let's look at some of the feedback. Beth saying this won't be over for at least another year. Cases are going up in over 29 states. It's all political. Jelinek says, do I agree with Mississippi and Texas and what they are doing? Hell no. If they're going to open everything up, at least keep the mask mandate. Yeah, that sounded reasonable to me. But, down south, it's a different mentality.
Yeah.
We do have some people up here that are anti everything. Let's get back. Everything's political. Let's give it a shot. If you're scared, stay home. Kind of, you see that a lot. But in Texas, there's I think that's the majority opinion down there.
Well, and I'll tell you, you told an anecdote story. I've got one as well. because right now, at least until tomorrow, we're at 50% or we're at 25% capacity at bars and restaurants. Tomorrow it goes to 50. I went to go get carry out last Friday, and I went to go get some sushi. And as I was walking up to the restaurant, I was looking in the window, and it looked like just a regular day. Like it's supposed to be 25%. I was like, what's with all these tables filled with people? And obviously nobody's wearing a mask except for the hosts and the waiters and the waitresses. It looked extremely pre-pandemic, extremely normal, and it didn't look like 1 out of every 4 tables was filled. And you talk about winking and nodding, that particular place is winking and nodding, and when they get to 50%, they're going to be winking and nodding. They'll have like one table in the corner that's empty and say, we're at 50%, sure, yeah, look at that table over there.
Yeah, the weird part, it's not weird. We hope that it works. Even, for the people that are against us, we're hoping that what we think is actually not going to happen. So yeah. That's how it goes. All right, Chap, great job. I got text from all my Spartan fans saying things like good night, bad calls, and everything else. So things look like it's, from my guess, is things looking good for Michigan. Coming up on Tuesday's Fifth Chapter, we will discuss if Michigan State is going to get in the tournament, what the seedings look like for the big tournament, and the rest of the conferences. Have a great weekend. Thanks to Brian Jelinek, everybody, for using the feedback and watching the show. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, but people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.